gotta tell somebody.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
Let's talk about that.
You need this. Listen to this.
Memorable and exciting.
Well, then be less boring.
I'm going to tell everyone. Wait here.
Mighty remarkable, Big Daddy.
Remarkable.
Welcome to Remarkable, a podcast for B2B marketers that deconstructs the most iconic moments in film, television, pop culture, and advertising for a single purpose: to give you, the B2B marketer, the same storytelling techniques that the pros use. In each episode, you will learn techniques from Hollywood, Pixar, Marvel, and beyond, from Spielberg's hands to yours, bringing remarkable content ideas to you every single week. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. This is Remarkable. And this week, we're talking about B2B marketing lessons from Silicon Valley. With Isaac Morehouse. Isaac, how are you?
Doing great. I am shocked that this show has not yet had an episode. I mean, this has to be the greatest show in startup history.
You know, it is crazy that we haven't talked about it. Maybe because it's so close. Maybe it's just too close to our lives. Yeah, I don't know.
That's fair. It's a blast. I'm excited to talk about it and whatever else we want to chat about.
Yeah, and Isaac, you're the CMO of Reveal. We're going to talk about that, how you think about marketing and content, and then a bunch about Silicon Valley. So why the heck did you pick Silicon Valley to talk about today?
Well, you know, it's funny. Originally, when you asked me about coming on here, I thought about the show Lost, which is quite dated now, but I had a couple like interesting thoughts and lessons from Lost. But it was definitely like a harder fit. It was harder to map some of those on. And at the same time, my wife and I were rewatching Silicon Valley because we watched it all when it came out live. And I was like, man, this holds up. Like it still holds up. Times are different, but they just did so many things so well. And I thought this would actually be a lot more fun and a lot easier. And I'm always for do the easy thing. If there's an easy option and a hard option, go with the easy one. So let's go Silicon Valley.
Yeah, I do like a good easy button. I will say that. Zooming out, tell us a little bit about what it means to be CMO of Reveal.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because Reveal is a platform that helps B2B SaaS companies connect their CRM with their partners so they can map data about like shared customers, shared opportunities. So for example, if you have an integration with a company and your tech partners, you can see, oh, here are 50 accounts that are customers of that partner that are open opportunities or prospects of ours, or maybe shared customers. And when you start to be able to map out your ecosystem and see who surrounds your buyer, where the other companies and points of influence live on these accounts, it helps you coordinate and strategize and plan for co-marketing campaigns, to do co-selling together or co-servicing. And so it's really about moving toward, I think, really the way that buyers are changing how they're buying already, which is through those that surround them, through the voices they trust. And it's about reaching the buyer with and through those that surround them. And we call that a near-bound strategy. So Reveal kind of provides the data layer to running a near-bound strategy. And as CMO at Reveal, a big part of our marketing strategy is nearbound.com, which is essentially a media entity. It does events, tons and tons of content, and all kinds of formats around how to run a near-bound strategy. And so it's kind of a category level media play that is sort of our primary marketing strategy. And then obviously, if you're going to run a near-bound strategy, you need the tools to do it. Reveal is one of those tools. So it's been really fun for me to be able to kind of lean in on my strengths, which are sort of category building, content, community, rallying people around and driving conversations around a set of ideas as the chief mode of going to market. And Reveal has been a really awesome place to be able to do that.
Yeah, and we're going to dig into Nearbound, the strategy as well in the second half of our show here. I love the idea of, your job as CMO thinking about category, community, and content. 3 big C's, as it were. Meredith, what the heck is Silicon Valley?
So, as you know, I always like to start with the creation of whatever we're talking about. So, we'll start with Mike Judge, who's the creator of Silicon Valley.
That is Meredith O'Neill, our amazing producer extraordinaire.
And as an aside, he also created Beavis and Butthead and King of the Hill, which I found so interesting. But he said that he came up with Silicon Valley when he was
in Office Space, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, in Office Space. Yeah. So, like, this seems so different for him to me. So I was like, what's the deal? How did he come up with this idea? And he said he had kind of been toying with the idea of creating a movie about America's tech giants. And part of that is like he had actually worked as an engineer in Silicon Valley before. And so it was while he was working on King of the Hill that he came up with the idea. And it's because like HBO also approached him for a show about gamers. And he was like, well, I don't really know much about the gaming world, but what about Silicon Valley? Because I have personal experience with that. But a top priority for him was credibility. Like, does the show seem believable and real? So, of course, the show being about a tech company, Judge and his showrunner, Alec Berg, went and visited Quora. They visited Google. They talked to people who work for Apple. Mike Judge talked to his engineering friends. So they're sort of fielding all of this, like real information about what's it like to work at a tech company, at a startup, to work in Silicon Valley. And it turns out the life of a tech startup employee is often like pretty over the top anyway. So Thomas Middleditch, who actually plays like basically the main character, he's the founder of this fictional tech startup, Pied Piper.
I thought we were going to replace the name Pied Piper. I thought it was just a placeholder.
Placeholder would honestly be a better name than Pied Piper.
Richard, I've actually been holding off telling people that I'm the co-founder of Pied Piper because frankly, it's a little embarrassing.
He said, it seems like you can't hyperbolize it for a joke hard enough. And so a lot of it is like very over the top, very absurd. But one of the problems that came with like trying to establish credibility of the show is that they had to decide like, what is Pied Piper going to be working on? What is their product that they're developing? And so Mike Judge said, whatever app they come up with, if it's really to be believable that this app is successful and in demand and huge, you'd have to believe it would be that way in the real world. And they were like, do we create an actual app for this show? Like just to make this show? He's like, I could probably make more money on the app than making a TV show about it. So Mike Judge started thinking like, when I was back in school, like learning to be an engineer, what was an idea that we could take from that and use in the show? And it was for a compression algorithm.
Today's user wants access to all of their files from all of their devices instantly. That's why cloud-based is the holy grail. Now, Dropbox is winning. But when it comes to audio and video files, they might as well be called Dripbox. Using our platform, Pied Piper users would be able to compress all of their files to the point where they truly can access them instantly. We control the pipe, they just use it. That's the vision in Richard Hendrick's head.
And so he was like, whatever, for a lot of people, that's kind of like over their head if you're not in the tech world. But he thought like it's believable enough. It avoids Twitter nerds sort of saying, they get something wrong in the show. And they didn't have to make an actual app. And it was over sort of the general listener's head. So they could kind of like take this idea and run with it. And lastly, he said, just one little detail is he said, if they ever showed any like math or any like ideas on a whiteboard, it was like super brief and then it was over. So they kind of like escape having to prove anything to the audience. But for anyone who hasn't seen it, Silicon Valley is a comedy show, and it parodies what it's like working in a tech startup in Silicon Valley and trying to keep it afloat and beating out the competition.
What do you got?
Okay, here it is. Bit soup. It's like alphabet soup, but it's ones and zeros instead of the letters. Because it's binary, binary is just ones and zeros.
Yeah, I know what binary is. Jesus Christ, I memorized the hexadecimal times tables when I was 14 writing machine code. Okay? Ask me what 9 times F is. It's 75. I do not need you telling me what binary is, just like I don't need you thinking about soup or taking pictures of it. I need you thinking about apps, software, websites. This is Silicon Valley.
It stars a handful of comedians. Like I had seen a lot of like stand-up specials with like TJ Miller. So I didn't even realize that he was in this because I hadn't seen it before.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
TJ Miller is unhinged. It's amazing. He always is.
He always ends up
so
with water
good.
all over himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's super unhinged. I love it. And Zach Woods and their actors like Josh Brenner, Amanda Crew, and Martin Starr, who I hadn't seen in anything since Freaks and Geeks, but I like love seeing him as like this like grown actor who's, I don't know, it's just so fun seeing him again. But there are 6 seasons out now on HBO or Max, originally aired from 2014 to 2019. It's been nominated for a handful of primetime Emmys, so it's been well received. And if I were to like take lessons from all of this, it's like, do research on whatever topic you're covering, like be on the ground, like talking to the people who are, invested in this topic. And
First person research, Meredith?
First person research. That's right.
Sound familiar?
We like to say live in market. Like forget go to market, just live in the market, and you don't have to go to it. You're there,
I like
Totally.
that. Well, for making this show, Meredith and I, as we've been tinkering with this over the past, almost 100 episodes now, one of the big changes that we made from our research was doing it. Our research, Meredith's research, is just getting first person quotes from the actual people rather than sort of relying on other things. And when you know it, much more rich, conversations when you actually get the first person quotes.
Yeah, it's been really cool. No, all good. Another thing I thought was like the realness, like making something real. A lot of it is like in the details. So like in the show, like it's like people on those weird bike scooters in a meeting,
segways,
like where they're all
yeah.
The segways, but also like there's like a party bike aspect for like people in a meeting.
People.
Like,
yeah.
And they're just like passing off in the background. There might be like one little line about it, but it's done and over in a second. But it's like, oh yeah, like those things are around.
It's the density of, if you're looking at food, you'd say like the nutrient density, the comedic density of all the scenes in that show. That's why rewatching it has been so fun, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize the layers of humor that are like in the background that just pass so quickly.
Oh, I'm sure you see something new every time you watch it. Yeah, there's so much going on, like all the little like food stations and things like that. Like I guess at Google, they don't let you, They don't let you be like 100 feet from food. Like there's always food nearby. It was something like that.
So I haven't heard that, but that is definitely true. And each of the different tech companies have their own different things. Like Google has like this huge cafeteria, where Salesforce like doesn't provide meals, just snacks, because they want you to like eat out in the go spend money with the local businesses and stuff like that. So each company has their own sort of like little things there, but yeah.
They undersell the people who will just subsist on snacks, I think.
I have eaten so many Salesforce snacks in my life. I cannot even tell you. And I didn't even work there. I was just there so much for podcasts.
I love it. That's cool. But yeah, so like while watching this, I'm like, and Isaac, you've seen more of it than I have, but like some of it is cringy. Some of it is a little bit cheesy, but it's like, it all works. Like the sense of humor, like, they said like, it's so kind of close to what it's actually like to work in like a tech startup.
Who are these people? I don't know. Did Jack hire engineers already? These people are not in the engineering gene pool.
That's right, fellas. These are our new salespeople. They're the best in the business.
Like, what do you think works about like what they do with humor and like all the little details and things like that?
Yeah, it's funny. So I was watching this show as it was coming out while I was in the middle of building a tech startup. And part of that time, for one summer, I was living in Silicon Valley. I'm not, from Silicon Valley, but I had investors. I was living there. I did an incubator out there for part of that time. And what's so great about it is, unless you are in that Silicon Valley scene at that time when there's a lot of money sloshing around and things are kind of crazy, you would watch the show and think that it's like just too over the top. It's like too much of a goofy exaggeration.
I mean, goddammit, I always knew there was a perfect application for my algorithm. These notes, all this is going to save me months. This is it. I mean, I was right all along. I was right. Can I try something?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know.
Woo! Woo! Wow! Wow! Wow!
Sorry. It's okay.
But when you're there, you actually know they're all based on like real stories. And someone who's like, oh, that scene over here? They got that from this guy that I used to work with. He the writers of the show came to him and he told them this crazy story. And they like wouldn't name names, but they would, people, if you were inside Silicon Valley, everybody could tell you which character was supposed to be who and which scene was like based on some real thing that happened. So I thought there's like several things that they did right. And I think it all starts with the core of knowing your market, living in market, as you mentioned. And I've noticed this with Mike Judge, like you said, Office Space, King of the Hill, and this show, they nail the little slice of the world that they're trying to sort of satirize so well. And I think satire especially, you can only do it well when you are the subject you're satirizing.
Nagging us.
Negging?
Negging is going negative. It's a manipulative sex strategy used by lonely chauvinists.
See, everybody wants us, but by shitting all over us, they try and bring our price down. But you shitting all over them counteracted their shitting all over us. You nagged a nag. Richard, this could be good.
Like someone from the outside, trying to make fun of a group that they're no part of, it's going to come off as offensive. They're going to get some things wrong. It's not. But when you're able to make fun of the little cluster of the world that you live in yourself, you're going to get it so much more right, and it's going to be so much funnier. And at the same time, the redeeming qualities are captured. That's what's so amazing with all of Mike Judge stuff is like King of the Hill is really good at this, especially. It's poking fun at this little suburban Texas life, or in this case, Silicon Valley, while at the same time showing you the really positive aspects. There's some heartwarming components. There's some things that are admirable.
Cheers.
For me?
Yeah! You saw our coin price, right?
Well, look at that.
And it's not like a vicious satirization that you might get from an anti-tech blogger or something, but nor is it like this big celebration you're going to get from a documentary about how great startup founders are. It's this really great combination of taking itself lightly and poking fun at itself while also revealing like the good stuff. And I think that's the combination that is just so delightful that everybody can participate in and enjoy.
I think that ultimately, like we seek to connect with other people, through humor, through shared experiences. And like we want, even if it's making fun of ourselves, we want to be seen, And so it's like if someone, when someone makes a joke about you, or you see a meme that's about you, and then, your spouse sends it to you or something, and you're like, yeah, no, I definitely saw that too. That is me for sure. Like, but then you feel like someone else, hey, I'm not the only guy who's like this. So there's other guys, out there that, just when they're making food that just sit there and like watch the thing being made and don't do any side work or whatever. And then, and then your wife sees that and thinks of you. And I think that's like for me, Silicon Valley, when I was watching it, is like just total mastery of the insane parts of Silicon Valley.
If Melter never lost access to his data, what's he so upset about?
Richard, I'm so sorry. We were tasting cakes, and then you called, and then it just came out.
What came out?
You said it!
I think there's a story here.
No!
But also the like amazing parts and the camaraderie and the friendship and the silliness and the like working on hard problems.
Can't you two see? You're each other's best friends.
Fuck you, Jared.
No. Jinx, you owe each other a friendship.
And that, these hard problems have big outcomes that happen. And some of those outcomes are making certain people lots of money. And some of those outcomes are, changing the world just a tiny little bit. And that's cool. And that's super cool. The scene that always jumps out to me that like is like, oh my God, they nailed it so good, was when they play the game Always Blue. So they take this little ball, and it's like sort of like a Rubik's Cube sort of looking ball, and you're trying to throw it up in the air and catch it only on the blue part. And then they basically sit around in a circle, throw the ball up, and they catch it, and they say, always blue, and they try to catch it just on that part.
Always blue! Always blue! Always blue! Always blue! Always blue! Always blue!
And I was like, that is just like A+ storytelling. And it tells you everything you need to know about their little group, which is like, they're working hard, but also they have this, brotherly affinity towards each other.
And that serves as kind of an anchor point too. Like, it starts off, there's just a bunch of guys in this room working on kind of scrappy little stuff that's not really going anywhere, but they're playing this game. It's lighthearted, it's camaraderie, it's this thing they do. And then throughout the show, you'll see scenes, usually at the end of an episode, where they're doing that again. And sometimes it's like, they raised a ton of money, now they're the coolest thing in the world. And then they're back down at the bottom. And no matter what, it like anchors back at the end of the day, no matter whether they're the hottest thing in town and they're worth millions or they're nothing, they're still just people when they go home at night and they drink a beer with each other. And that's like a really great, it's so subtle. They don't just tell you to your face. They just demonstrate and show this little ritual that they do.
To Pied Piper's past and now present CEO.
Oh, what about future?
Jared, we'll worry about that later. Tonight is about Richard.
So I got three little lessons for content marketers from the show. Do you want me to go through my three?
Yeah, send it.
Okay. So first one I already kind of mentioned is make fun of yourself.
So from rules-based filtering, we go to workflow, at which point that card is moved from the icebox into the in progress column, and it stays there until it is ready for testing. Okay, this increases visibility into our team's progress. And that, gentlemen, is Scrum. Welcome to the next 8 weeks of our lives.
This just became a job.
And I think content marketers, like, this is such a missed opportunity if you're not doing this. Make fun of yourself, make fun of your market, make fun of your marketing. Like, don't be precious, accept and amplify the criticisms, right? So like in sales, you would say, the objections that are the inevitable objections, if you can surface those ahead of time, get those up front. In marketing, do the same thing, right? Like, poke fun at the things that people are going to poke fun at behind your back anyway. So, in our case, we're like doing this category building thing and we're trying to get this concept of going to market with partners to call it nearbound, outbound, inbound, nearbound. And of course, people are going to be like, oh, here's the latest friggin' buzzword. Everyone's trying to create a category and name something that doesn't need a name. They're trying to give it a name and a definition. Rather than run away from that or fight it and be like, no, it does need a word. Nearbound, you need to take this seriously, right? I like to lean into it and poke fun at it. We did a whole video series called like, let's get nearbound into the dictionary. And it was just like really, really goofy. And it was like one of the guys on our team, like, going and holding up signs or like going around and trying to get a petition signed to get nearbound in the dictionary and like wondering why nobody, he would ask people what's nearbound and they'd be like, what are you talking about? And it's like making us look silly for trying to we're trying so hard to elevate this word nearbound. We're poking fun of the very fact that we're out here trying to introduce this word into the business lexicon. And people loved that. And it's like you relieve all the tension in the room by making the joke that everyone else was going to make behind your back anyway. And I think that's really, really missed in marketing. Like, it's way safer to do that than to be really self-serious. So that's the first lesson, make fun of yourself. I don't know if you guys had any comments on that one.
Well, yeah, it's the 8 Mile move. When he goes into the final rap battle,
boom,
he goes first and he takes all of his material. But it's you got to show that you're not serious about it, and it depends who you're marketing to, right? And it's like I think that there's ways, like if you work, we've dealt with this a lot, and as we're building shows, if you're close to healthcare, it's like there's not a lot of jokes that you can make, so you need to find areas of levity within that, and maybe the levity is not necessarily like gut punch humor, but maybe the levity is more around the always blue type idea, like camaraderie and things like that. And I do think it is important, just as sort of a subnote to that, to just what you're saying is like, don't take yourself too seriously. And like at the end of the day, like it's business, it's like someone's either going to buy your stuff or they're not, and hopefully you can make a little difference along the way, and they can, use nearbound as a buzzword that helps them clarify their thinking, or not, they can just keep using what they've always been using.
Totally. And that's what I always say too, like, look, if this is not helpful to you, don't use it. I'm not going around like trying to evangelize. Like, we're trying to give a framework and a concept that's useful and helpful? If it is, let's go. If it's not, not. On the challenges of trying to make fun of yourself and stuff, right? Like certain things you can't, like you're not going to go make jokes about, your data security or something like that. But what I think you can do is poke fun at some of the archetypes that exist in every industry. So like one of my favorite, I just made this video on LinkedIn just for fun. Like this was not like some strategic marketing thing, but just for the heck of it. Because I was feeling this problem myself internally at Reveal. And I was like, gonna make a joke about it on the internal Slack. And I thought, you know what? I'm just gonna make a joke and share it on LinkedIn. And so the whole thing was what every marketer and sales team face this problem. The sales team is like, hey, marketers, we need case studies. We need more case studies. They just give us case studies, give us one-pagers, give us data that we can tell to, our buyers to convince them to buy our stuff. And the sales team always feels like the marketing team never gives them what they want. And the marketing team always feels like, we have tons of this stuff. We produce it all the time. You never bother to look at it. You never know where it is. You always ask us for the same thing. And so I decided to make this little video. And I thought, okay, as a marketer, I was going to make one making fun of salespeople for asking for case studies that already exist or just for things that were totally unreasonable. But I thought that has to be part two. First, I got to soften that by making fun of marketers. And so like I made a video where the marketer is like, hey, I made you this 17-page case study that's just, blah, blah, blah. And the salesperson's like, I get 30 minutes with this person on the phone. You think I'm going to tell them to read like 17 pages? And it's kind of making fun of how marketers are tone deaf and they go out and produce all this stuff. Once I did that and softened everybody up, then I could do the one making fun of salespeople. And everybody loved it. It was great. It had some great discussion, but it wasn't at all like about anything sensitive. It was more like, I know that our marketing and sales teams feel this tension from time to time. I know every marketing and sales team does. Let's get it out there and have some fun with it. It's not explicitly directly related to Reveal, but it's related to the market that we live in. And it's kind of a way to like be in that market and just build trust and be like, we're poking fun of these same problems.
I love that.
So I've got number 2 of lessons from Silicon Valley. So number 1 was make fun of yourself. Number 2, it's so simple. Every content marketer is like familiar with this concept, but show the hero's journey. Like, and part of this is making your audience feel seen, letting them see themselves in that journey. That was one of the great things about Silicon Valley. To your point, if you work in this industry or around it, you're like, yes, I have felt that way. I have experienced that. I have had that moment. I remember he's first starting the company and he's like, yay, I got my first check. And he takes it to the bank and the lady's like, oh, this is made out to a company. You can't just cash it yourself. And he's like, wait, what? I got to go register a company? And then he like finds out all these hoops he has to. I had that experience with my very first company. I felt so seen. I was like, oh my gosh, I've been through that. But what I love is they're making fun of all this stuff.
I just thought that mainly the goal of companies is to make money.
Yeah, no. That's not how it works. I don't want to make a little bit of money every day. I want to make a fuck ton of money all at once. ROI. ROI. You know what that stands for?
Return on
investment.
Nope. Radio on internet.
But at the same time, the very people they're making fun of are also presented in a way with empathy, and they're kind of the heroes, right? They're kind of the heroes battling up against this stuff, even though they do a bunch of stupid stuff along the way and they're very ridiculous. They're also heroic, and you get to see that arc. And what I like is that the hero's journey is an arc that is more foundational than the specific arena that it's taking place in. So you're making a show about startup founders in Silicon Valley. People that work in other places, other industries can still relate to that show because it's showing that arc, that classic arc of like, you're called to something. And then you run up against obstacles, and then you meet a guide who helps you along the way. And then you go, and you can get into and map it out.
Point is, you all thought I was crazy when I walked into the swimming pool with my clothes on. But it turns out I was fucking right. Okay, so not crazy, opposite, you poor idiots.
That's so universal. It's so easy as content marketers to like forget that very basic thing, right? Like every story has beginning, middle, and end. Every story should have a protagonist and should follow. Like finding out how to make sure you're not losing that and just doing like, here's our product, right? Like tell the story. That's what people can relate to. That's where they feel seen. If you're telling a story of a person facing adversity and achieving an outcome. And I think the show does that really well.
Yeah, I mean, it's so obvious, but I think it's so important to repeat it like over and over and over again with Hero's Journey stuff, because that is what our brains are wired to remember. If I was like, hey, Isaac, dude, I got the best thing for you. It'll get your email newsletter up 67%. If I go ask you 10 days from now what percentage increase the newsletter got, you would have no idea. You would not remember the number. You know what I mean? But it's like if I was like, hey, my newsletter has like super been struggling with open rates. I was really struggling with this. I went and I found this gal. She's brilliant. Her name is Carol, and she's like a total guru. And she helped me fix it all up. And now, I've doubled it. And you would be like, hey, I remember Ian doubled his whatever because he worked with some lady named Carol.
And especially if you gave me 1 or 2 points in that story, right? Saying, hey, I achieved X% something. That's like, okay, I guess I'm not really sure what that means. But if you said, Isaac, I had this newsletter, I was literally about to shut it down.
Yeah.
Right? I was about to shut it down. I was about to give up hope. My brain immediately starts paying attention. You were about to give up hope? Then what happened, right? And then the craziest thing, I was in line getting coffee and unexpected, I met this person and she happened to mention this thing. And then I went and did it. And the craziest thing, things blew up by whatever percent. And now I'm recommending her to everyone. Now, I'm not even going to worry so much about the percentage, but now my imagination's hooked. Like you were at the bottom and then some unexpected thing happened and then you're at the top. Now I'm going to be like, hey, who was the name of that lady? What was the name of that tool that she helped you with? Right? Like, because you painted a picture. I could empathize with you when you said, I almost shut it down. That's a moment I can empathize with because I've shared that. I can't empathize with 67% increase. Right? Like, I don't know what to do with that in terms of my human emotion. So I think sharing those moments, the low points and then the triumphs, and we can all see ourselves in those, that's so much easier to connect with.
Yeah. And I think that when you humanize the whole thing with both like the protagonist going through the thing and then also, how they're getting help, like it allows you to think of the people in your own life, to seek help. The idea of like, oh, hey, who has a coach? Michael Jordan had a coach. Who else had a coach? Luke Skywalker had a coach. Like, who? It's like we can't really do this stuff alone, and you need to go seek help. And there's people out there that can help you. Like, it just all those things allow it, which is why Hero's Journey is so great, right? Is like once you get the help, then you can become your best self.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we had lesson 1, make fun of yourself. Lesson 2, show the hero's journey, helps people be seen. Lesson 3 for me, don't underestimate audience intelligence. And I think it's really interesting, this show, what a phenomenal job they do of not running away from some of the complicated, complex concepts, insider jargon. I mean, they have discussions about, letters of intent and legal contracts and stock preference stacks and like waterfalls with exits and all this kind of stuff is very insider legal. They don't shy away from it because that's what makes it real and believable. But they do it in such a way that makes it understandable. Like if it's confusing, it's your fault as a content creator. If it's confusing, it's your fault. You have to find a way. And this show does such a brilliant job of explaining these concepts in such a way that even outsiders can get the gist of it. They can sit there and watch a conversation. My mom or my wife, who's not at all connected with this stuff, she can watch a conversation in the show between a lawyer and a startup founder where they're talking about the way a contract is written and how it means that the preferences of certain shareholders are going to do X, Y, and Z. And they can walk away knowing, oh, I get it. It means that he signed something, not realizing that it puts this other person in more control than he thought.
You remember that shit deal you brought me from Hanneman? And I said, hey, Richie, this is a shit deal, but you took it anyway because you wanted to do something crazy for once in your life?
Yes, I remember.
Well, you basically just loaded a gun and handed it to Hanneman, and Hanneman sold that gun to Reviga, and then Reviga just fucking pistol whipped you. You lose a little blood with the dilution for the new CEO, but I've seen worse. Like that shit deal you brought me from Hanneman.
And she doesn't need to know all the details, even though they use that word. So like, it's brilliant because it hits across all markets. If you're in Silicon Valley, you can't call BS because they're using real terminology and explaining things real. They're not shying away from the complexity. To your point, Meredith, Mike Judge was like, it needs to be believable, right? People are going to call us out. But they do it in such a way that doesn't alienate people who are kind of on the edges. And I think that's really, really hard for marketers. We want to go one way or the other. We either do content 100% for the nerds that know exactly what we're talking about and nobody else. I mean, how many product websites have you been to where you're like, I have no idea what they are talking about. I hope that their ICP knows what they're talking about because I don't. And I've worked in tech, right? I'm like, I think they're going too far down that, let's just speak to this one persona who knows what we're saying. Or you go one that's like, we want to be broad enough that everyone can understand it. And you go to the website and you scroll for 5 minutes and it's just like, we solve the biggest problems. And you're like, okay, well, everyone can understand those words, but what does your product do? What is it? How does it work? And that marriage of like, don't be too simple and too dumbed down, but make the complex understandable. That is just brilliantly executed in this show. So much so that when I was running a boot camp called Praxis where we would train young people and place them in apprenticeships and startups, they would ask me like, okay, I'm about to go apprentice at this startup. They're 19, 20, whatever. I don't know anything about startups. Like what do I need to know? What book should I read? And I'd be like, okay, you can read like Peter Thiel's 0 to 1. That's more about like how to be a founder. Or you can read, like a lot of these are like how-tos if you're already running a startup. But how do you like get a sense of what the startup world is? I would literally say, go watch Silicon Valley. Honestly, you'll learn more. You'll understand who are all the players. You have VCs and they've got LPs and then you've got these founders and then you've got, what is it like trying to hire an engineering team? All the dynamics that are happening there. The show, even though it's an over-the-top comedy, it did a better job of educating people on what the startup world is like than pretty much anything else I could find.
I love that. I love that you gave that. That's so awesime. It's so
and they
funny.
loved it too, by the way. They really did. They're like, I'm so glad I watched that show because when I had a phone call with a VC, I knew what I was talking about. It's crazy.
When you said you'd guide us through some of the stuff, I thought that this was the stuff you'd be guiding us through.
I cannot guide you until you give me something to guide. This is going very poorly.
Yeah, so I love this takeaway to not underestimate audience intelligence. There's a great storytelling device, which the great David Mamet talks about, which is if your story has the words, as you know, you messed up as a writer. You can never say the words as you know. It is a ironclad rule because if you say as you know, like you would never in actual conversation ever hear someone say that. Be like, when you're making a podcast, Meredith, as you know, you need to upload the, audio, of course she knows that. I don't need to remind her of what she already knows. And I think that the show does a great job of not doing that. I don't know if they literally said those words ever, but they show don't tell all the time throughout the entire show. And the way that we think about that at Caspian is pick a 401, 301, 201, or 101 level for your content. Pick the content. And you can even say it at the beginning of your blog post, at the beginning of your podcast episode, at the beginning of whatever it is, what level content you are trying to write. If it's 101 level content, you might have to explain what the heck some of the words are. If you're telling 401, 301 level content, you don't need to explain any of that. You don't need to go back and explain what an MQL is, if it's a podcast for CMOs. They just get it. And so I've made like very concerted efforts when we're like coaching people on creating a show or building a show with them to be like, know exactly who your audience is and don't aim to try to please people who are below the level of sort of intellectual understanding for the content that you're trying to create. In fact, do the exact opposite. You could put a PSA, be like, if you don't know a single word that's happening at this, like Google it as you're going along, but we're not stopping for you because we got to get to the good stuff and we can't spend our time there. And I feel like it's a huge mistake that people make. And then they make content that is just like really boring and really basic without getting into the details.
Man, that's so true. You notice, if you just watch like organic content on LinkedIn, the stuff that tends to blow up consistently and really like get a lot of traction, build a lot of audience are things that are kind of in the weeds. Like go watch, I love Pete Caputa from DataBox. I follow him and he's just always sort of learning out loud, as we like to call it, about the way he's building his company. And he's very much getting into the weeds. Or like, Chris Walker is really big in the marketing world. His post, if you don't know what an MQL is, what an SQL is, all this stuff, you'll be lost. But because he's like, look, I'm assuming you know all this stuff, he's cutting through all that fluff and all that time wasting and getting his audience right to the part that they want. So yeah, I'm with you. I think this is a lesson. I had to remind myself of this because I like to write kind of for the lay person audience, so to speak. Like I like to keep things really simple, but to remind myself not to underestimate the intelligence of the market that we're serving.
Yeah, and what people a lot of times what they'll do is they'll create a character that is a novice, so then needs things explained to them, right? So that's how you can get some of that exposition out, is like create an avatar, what we say, what they say, the avatar for the audience. Who is the audience avatar? If you're the audience's avatar as the host of the show and you are, a CMO, it's like, well, you don't need to go below that at all because your target is yourself. But, a lot of people sort of get in trouble that way. The other thing that I do want to say too is about the creating of the technology for Pied Piper being real. Because you believe that it's real, and by the way, like it is real. It's not even like a fake technology, like that does exist. And, it's there's ways to do it. And the funny thing is, it's really hard. What they're trying to solve in that is really hard. We're recording right now on a platform that's trying to do this. People are actually pretty bad at it. The solutions that are out there are actually pretty bad. So that's I think really interesting that they chose sort of a hard problem. But that being grounded in reality allows all of the rest of the stuff for you to not take, not dig in too much on. You're like, okay, the company is a real technology. The rest of the stuff, I can just believe that they know what the hell they're doing here and they know what they're talking about. And I do think that if they had chosen something that wasn't good, it wouldn't have worked. We did this for Murder in HR, where we had to make this fake company piece of shit, and we wanted to make it silly and satirize it and all that sort of stuff. And so we were like, of course it has to be an AI powered something. And so, it's an AI powered, like vertical play for like naval navigation and boat maintenance. And it's like, they're trying to own, sort of anything that's in the sea that they have this AI powered solution for. And we chose that very specifically because we're like, okay, it's a vertical play. That's actually kind of interesting. There's pretty big market there, from small boats to big boats. Like, we thought a lot about that because at the end of the day, if you do dig in on it, you have to be like, well, actually, that's a pretty good total addressable market they're going after. That's pretty believable. And like, AI, like how stuff is stored in boats, how they're, doing maintenance and all that. Yeah, that tracks. Even though the rest of the story is about the most ridiculous thing ever, it's like that, I think, really grounded the story in like, hey, this could be a real startup. Otherwise, like, why would anyone believe it?
Yeah, no, that's great. You get the one big thing right as the anchor, and then you can be a lot more wild and crazy with the other stuff. Yeah, I like that.
All right. Anything else on Silicon Valley?
Man, just go watch it. It's so good. I almost feel like I should have watched episodes and done like breakdowns or something one at a time, because there's so many moments in there where you're like, oh, this is brilliant, the way that they did this or the way that they captured this. But
Isaac, dude, rewatch pods, they're so popular right now. You and I will do a Silicon Valley rewatch pod.
That's a great idea.
It would be really fun. Yeah, it's one of my all-time favorite shows. I don't even think I've actually finished it, which is funny because I've said this many times on this podcast. I like, for whatever reason, I like kind of just don't finish shows like on purpose. Like
they often go one season too long. They often kind of like, I finished it, but it was a slog through the last season.
Yeah, and it's hard. I think that there's logical points of startup that sort of you kind of have to condense, right? It's like, if a startup is 7 years, and they do 6 seasons, well, it's like, yeah, but your 0 to 1 is obviously very big. 0 1 to 2 is obviously really crazy, et cetera, et cetera. But like year 5 to 6 is not that interesting. And then, IPOs are very interesting. Yeah, it's a great show. It's one of the best in terms of nailing business. And that's, I think, really, really, really hard to do. So
what you saw too when it was coming out live, which by the way, I actually think it was much more fun watching one episode a week when they came out like that. I'm watching with my wife and we'll watch 2 or 3 back to back. You're like, okay, this is a little too much at once. It's not as enjoyable. It's interesting. But anyway, what was great about it is everybody was looking forward to that next episode dropping and like just couldn't wait. And there's a handful of shows that have been like that where it's like, what's the next one? But rarely with a comedy. It's usually like Game of Thrones or something, right? Where you're like, oh, there was a cliffhanger and I got to know what happens next. This was a comedy. And everybody was like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait till this drops and people get together and have watch. So, hey, there you go. Make content that people are dying for it to come out. Easy.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, I think I'll say the final thing here too. We're barely going to have enough room for Nearbound, but I mean, we could probably go 3 hours on the show. I think like these actors really nailed it. And I know that there's all sorts of silly stuff. And I know that, you know, if you go listen to the actors sort of talk about it later on, and I don't know if they really have an affinity for tech, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And who cares? It doesn't really matter. But in the moments, there's so much love between the camaraderie.
Okay, no, Erlich, I want you to be in there.
Okay, wait, what?
Yes, and I need you to do all the talking because I feel like if I do, I'm going to puke all over Peter Gregory.
Oh, okay. Wow. That was easier than all the talking?
And when I was looking back on it, it feels like they were my friends, right? Which is the mark of any good show, right? Any great show, you're like, oh, I remember we used to do that. And I think looking back on it now, for me, after, you know, having been in startups for 10 years, or in and around the startup ecosystem for 10 years, what is so interesting is you really opine for the teams of the past. You really think back on your favorite teams, the people that you worked with, the people that you're like, oh my gosh, like we used to just like sit in this office and there was no AC and it was the craziest thing and all that. And I think like Silicon Valley is kind of aged in that way in my mind, where it's like this snapshot in time of these people going through this, you know, building this company. And I'm not to say that we need to bring back, you know, the cast and do a reboot, but it's an interesting idea to think at, you know, to think of that nostalgia in business and in tech. And it's very real. And you get removed 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and like you really feel different about it. You're like, you know, that job wasn't that bad. It was actually kind of fun. And that's like a really weird phenomenon that happens. And it even happens, and it sort of makes you think about it with Silicon Valley, which
I tell my team that, by the way, my marketing team, I say, look, like lose yourself in what we're doing right now. Like go all in. Don't hold anything back. I don't expect all of us to be here for our entire lives. That's not how startup works. The average tenure is like 18, 24 months, whatever. Think of this as a tour of duty. Maybe it's 1 year, maybe it's 3 years. However long we're doing this together, go all in. Because this stuff, when we're going through the trenches, when we're going through the junk, the hardest parts, you're going to remember this. And if you half-assed it and you weren't really a part of it, you're going to wish you were. So like, just let's go all in. And whenever we part, but you'll always have this memory that we did this thing together and went through all this stuff, and try to get them, you know, thinking that way ahead of time.
Okay, let's talk Nearbound.
Yeah.
How the heck did you build this thing?
So, you know, really looking at the space that we're playing in and understanding that like people are starting to go to market with partners. And there's this, like the old world has something called channel, like where you're doing like literally reselling through people. But then sort of new SaaS startups, they don't really do channel because you can sell directly to consumers. But more and more, they have these ecosystems of partnerships. Like HubSpot and Salesforce, for example, have massive ecosystems of solutions partners that are helping to implement and service all these, as well as massive ecosystems of tech partners that have all these integrations, and you've got your marketplaces to go find all the different apps you can connect, you know, HubSpot with or Salesforce. And recognizing that those can not only like be complementary from a product standpoint or a service standpoint, but from a go-to-market standpoint, that being able to say, oh, you're already using X tool, you should be using Y tool. Or, hey, so-and-so over at, you know, this company said that you guys are looking for a solution for this, right? And like, this is sort of happening in the market. And so there's all these people out there talking about it in different ways. And they're kind of like Like partnerships departments are off in the corner by themselves and they're trying to manage all these relationships with partners. But sales, marketing, success teams are not really thinking about that, right? They're just doing their own thing in their own way. And people are like, well, we got to think about like an ecosystem-led strategy or a partner-led strategy. Those don't connect with those other departments. Partnerships people like that language, but it doesn't connect. The salesperson is like, VP of sales is like, I don't know what you mean by ecosystem-led growth. I don't know what you mean by partner-led growth. Right? That's like the partnerships department. Nearbound is such a perfect term to encapsulate this approach because everyone's already familiar with outbound. Everyone's familiar. Like outbound is like go disrupt buyers. Inbound is attract buyers. Nearbound is surround buyers. Recognize that they have on the buyer's journey, there's 28 points, supposedly, based on who you ask. And those 28 moments on the buyer journey, your company is probably a part of 3 of them. And it's usually the last 3. What's happening on all those other moments? Who is a part of all those other moments? Who is influencing them? And you look at the way buyers behave, they no longer Google, how do I solve X, right? We've moved from the how economy to the who economy. Instead, because they get too many results. It's like, how do I solve my attribution problem? Oh, I'll go to G2 and I'll look at a product comparison. Both products have 4.7 stars because everything does now. How am I supposed to decide which one I'm going to buy? Instead, they go to who they trust. There's too much information, so you go to somebody you know has done it before. Hey, I know you've done this before. What do you recommend? What do you think about this company, right? And you're asking the people around you. So recognizing that's the way buyers buy, companies need to think, how do I map out all the people that orbit my buyer? And how do I start to partner with them and go to market together with them? And we, sort of calling that nearbound and putting out the playbook for how to do this and really following in the footsteps of HubSpot, who really pioneered. They taught the market how to do inbound. And I learned how to do inbound from HubSpot through all their content. And then by the time I wasn't a customer of theirs for many, many years. And then by the time I needed a tool, it was a no-brainer. Of course I'm going to buy HubSpot. They're the one who taught me how to do it. Why would I not? I trust them, right? And that's kind of the idea with Nearbound in the play that we're running.
Yeah, and so that's sort of the category setup. And now you need to execute on this community vision and the content vision. What was your strategy, your sort of, go-to-market strategy there?
Yeah, so for me, living in market is so crucial. And the best way to live in market is with a forcing function of daily creation. I've learned this myself personally through daily blogging, which I've been doing for the most part for about 10 years, that it forces you. Because so we first launched, we started as a media company that got acquired by Reveal because we owned the market really, really quickly. And so when we first launched this media company, I was like, we need a daily newsletter. Not because I think that's what the market wants, although I think they do. I think there's a gap there and they like it. But because I know that's the only way I'm going to be close enough to the market and what's happening. If I have to come up with content every single day to put in this newsletter, I got to figure out where are the watering holes? What are people talking about? What are the conversations? And then I'm going to have to do nearbound marketing, which means bringing other voices in, reaching the market through the voices they already trust. I'm not going to just write content every single day. Hey, here's what Isaac Morehouse thinks about marketing or about running your partner strategy. I have to go find the voices they already trust. And I got to pull them in. Hey, did you see this thing that Jay McBain said yesterday? Hey, did you see this conversation on LinkedIn between these people? Hey, did you see this Slack group of partnership leaders where they were debating this? Here's a highlight. And then put a little spin on it. So the daily newsletter was the core foundation, along with a weekly podcast. And then turning that into pulling in other voices, publishing articles written by others, doing things. Everything we did was in partnership with other people. And we created this content engine. To me, it's like you have a category, you create content to drive conversations around that category. Those conversations coalesce into communities. That was the play. And that's exactly what we did. And this content engine is just so prolific. Every week we're putting out 10, 15 pieces of content between podcasts, videos, social posts, newsletters, and pulling in hundreds and hundreds of voices so that we become the center of gravity around which these conversations start happening. And then that allows things like events to be very easy to spin up. A community naturally forms, and then you're in business.
Why build it on a separate site?
Well, kind of a two-pronged answer. One is because we started as a separate company that was originally called Partner Hacker, a media company that got purchased by Reveal. And then we rebranded to nearbound.com because we really liked that language. That was kind of the language we'd been searching for. We never really liked the name Partner Hacker. We just didn't have a better one. But because it was already an independent media brand and company, we decided to maintain that kind of like, hey, this is something for the whole category. And yes, it's very obvious. This is a project of Reveal. This is brought to you by Reveal. Reveal is mentioned and linked from time to time, but it's not. Reveal is about the product itself. This is about the category. This is for the whole industry. This is for everyone. And I think HubSpot has Inbound, the conference that's called Inbound. They don't have a separate like content engine that's like inbound.com, but they do have some sort of like, hey, here's the category. And we're talking about the category over here. And then over here, we're talking about the product. So I've gone back and forth on whether that's better or worse, because I have a lot of people come to me and ask like, hey, we're going to launch a media brand. Should we name it the same thing as our company or not? What should that relationship be? I think you can go either way. I think there's pros and cons to both.
Yeah, I think that there's a million decisions there. I think that if you're the type of organization, like we were just talking to a cybersecurity company, they have a hard wall in between their editorial and their marketing. Whereas other people, especially if you're in marketing, it's truly more of what you would call branded content or content marketing, whatever you want to call it, where it's like you still want to help people, you want to, create content that helps people improve their careers, but ultimately it's also, of course, going to drive business. All right, Isaac, we got last question here. It's been awesome having you on the show, chatting Silicon Valley and Nearbound and all the cool stuff that you're doing at Reveal. What is your best piece of advice for either a CMO or, that like VP of brand content community that is trying to figure out their content strategy?
Trust is paramount. Our tagline is trust is the new data. And what that means is kind of as I got to before, like, hey, the how economy is over, where it's all like algo simping. As long as you get to the top of the search results, you're good to go. As long as you're rated well on some product website, that doesn't work anymore as information overload. So people are looking for who can they trust. And so trust comes from helping people reach their promised land, right? Trust comes from the people who have been where you want to go. If you're a marketer, and let's say you're marketing to, as in our case, partnership pros, I haven't been where they want to go. That's not my world. How many of your people running your content marketing, say you're marketing to CSOs? Have you ever been a CSO that's taken a company from 5 to 50 million? If that's your ICP, how can you ask them to trust you when you haven't been to the place they want to go? So what's the solution? The solution is to find those who have, find the voices they trust and market with them and through them, bring them into your content. You should never create a piece of content or do an event or do any sort of marketing brand sort of marketing type of activity alone. It should never just be you going to the market. It should be you partnering with others who are already in the market and influential in the market, and then having those conversations with and through them. And that doesn't always require a formal partnership. You can do permissionless, like find the voices and literally just shout them out, show them love, quote them, reference them. And often that will lead to a partnership. That will lead to like, hey, will you come on the podcast? But reaching the market through the voices that they already trust, that already surround them, that is the fastest way to build trust with them. Make them famous. Make your customers famous. Make the influencers in the market famous. Give them attention and love, which you can do for free, and you will gain trust through them of your buyers. That is my number one piece of advice. It's so weird. It's so strange to be like, let's go get some intern or some entry-level person to go get some AI and to crank out some article that's telling people how they should run their X, Y, and Z. It's like, who are you? Why should they listen to you, right? How about let's go find the people that they're already listening to and let's go tell their story and amplify them. Let's find the people who are already doing it and make them famous.
Love it. Could not agree more. Caspian's marketing strategy 2024 is content portfolio number 1, partners number 2, paid number 3.
I love it.
Could not agree more. Isaac, wonderful chatting today. Obviously, people go to reveal.co, check out the company, especially go give a nudge to your partner team. And then, of course, go to nearbound.com and all sorts of amazing content, podcasts, everything. Isaac, any final thoughts? Anything to plug?
No, man. We did just publish a book. It's a bestseller on Amazon, The Nearbound and the Rise of the Who Economy. So you can go check that out on Amazon. It's in all formats and everything. Definitely, like, if you want to get a taste of what we mean by this, it's a really accessible book. So go check it out.
Thanks, Isaac. Appreciate it.
Thanks to you both.
This is a private party, buddy. I'm going to have to ask you to leave.
Oh, I didn't mean...
You know, in the state of California, you can kill a man for entering your house without permission.
Well, that's it for today. I hope you got some good ideas for your B2B content. Thank you for listening to Remarkable. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. Remarkable is created by the team at Caspian Studios, B2B podcast as a service. Caspian also creates fiction series for B2B companies, so if you want a business thriller, you can learn more at caspianstudios.com. Hollywood-style storytelling for B2B. And in today's episode, you heard from myself, Ian Faison, and Meredith O'Neill, senior producer here at Caspian Studios. Remarkable was produced this week by Meredith O'Neill, mixed by Scott Goodrich, and our theme song is Solomon by Falak. Be remarkable and rise above the noise.